Kensuke Tanabe is a well-known figure amongst the Metroid community and the Paper Mario community, for better and worse. The man has a huge list of games he did contribute work towards, but he is primarily known for being a major producer for those two series above all else. As far as Metroid goes, I currently don't have much stake in critiquing or fully understanding his contributions there, because I'm currently the epitome of the corny type of Nintendo fan who calls themselves a Nintendo fan, but really only plays a handful of the big series.
Hey Nintendo fans, this is another Nintendo fan here. You can tell I love Nintendo by my ability to buy merchandise. I've never played Metroid.
I have access to most Metroid games. Metroid I'd love to hop into blind, even knowing some of the discourse surrounding Metroid Prime 4, but I'll get around to it eventually. Point is, I don't really have much stake in terms of Metroid's current situation or previous situations. Paper Mario, on the other hand, it's one of my fortes. You guys have likely seen my Paper Mario content. I adore the Paper Mario games, or at least the games within the first half of its library. It's a whole thing. The direction the series went in after Thousand Year Door, Super Paper Mario, the very divisive gameplay changes, the disapproved character design restrictions, and other elements. This is mainly going to be about Paper Mario, but a common spokesperson regarding the last 3 new Paper Mario titles, including the sticker star Iwata asks, was Kensuke Tanabe. Like 85 to 90% of interviews about Paper Mario, you're gonna find him chiming in on development insights, along with other big developers like each game's respective directors, writers, co-producers, etc. But Tanabe was always the primary figure to glean from in most talks regarding modern Paper Mario. And he basically kind of burned a lot of bridges with fans with the reasons and descriptions he would give for why modern Paper Mario is the way it is. The way he describes a lot of information, the reasoning from him and other people being interviewed, the sound of his influence and impact in Paper Mario games, Metroid games, and others as well. So amongst fans of the works he's had a hand in, he is a pretty divisive figure on a lot of accounts. But a big reason for talking about him again is that he has announced, roughly a week ago in an interview, with the editorial department of Nintendo Dream describing Metroid Prime 4's development, that Metroid Prime 4 is the last game he'll be working on with Nintendo. At least as far as making games for Nintendo, he is retiring from working with them. This will be linked in the description, the whole interview describing numerous facets about making Metroid Prime 4, so I'm not going to go super in-depth as far as the game, still gotta play it. We'll keep spoilery stuff out of the combo here as well for those that care. And the article is forged in Chinese, so this is a rough Google translation in English. Metroid Ultimate, supposed to be Metroid Prime in English, Cyrax, which is Cylux. Some translations are not going to be all the way there, or completely accurate, right? But towards the end of the interview, Tanabe's last message to readers goes something like this. It's been 40 years since I joined Nintendo. This Metroid Ultimate 4, Metroid Prime 4, will be the last game I work on at Nintendo. However, we didn't deliberately do anything special. Instead, like all previous Nintendo titles, we worked together with Retro Studios to create it, hoping to bring a fun and unique experience to players of all ages and types. If it becomes a game that leaves a lasting impression on players who have played it, I will be very gratified. And for those who haven't played it yet, I hope you will experience the unknown Planet Bros, I think Planet Vuros, through Samus's eyes. So as far as his retirement goes, I wouldn't be surprised if it's just him getting up to that age, feeling like it's time to pump the brakes a bit, He just turned 63, happy birthday, but he is getting up there in age. There are still people in this industry who've been in it for many, many years, but they are still trying to provide some major projects just for the love of the game. Like Miyamoto's older than Tanabe, but he's still always working on these new Nintendo movies, the Mario movies and the upcoming Zelda one. But there are plenty of people in these industries who get up to their early, mid, late 60s who either lessen their collaborative efforts and overall work scope as they approach retirement age, or they just retire altogether. Obviously, I'm not him at all, so it's tough to say unless he provides such an answer, but him retiring from making games with Nintendo, to me at least, it's not super surprising. That, and we focus on him primarily doing stuff with Metroid Prime and Paper Mario, but credit where credit's due, the dude does have an impressive resume. Directed and course-directed Doki Doki Panic, Super Mario Bros. 2, course-designed Mario 3, scenario writer for Zelda Link to the Past, Link's Awakening, co-produced Metroid Prime, and he is a producer for Chibi Robo, Mother 3, Metroid Prime 2, Metroid Prime 3, Super Mario Strikers Charge, Super Smash Bros. Brawl, Punch-Out on the Wii, Metroid Prime Trilogy, Donkey Kong Country Returns, Luigi's Mansion 3, the remake for Luigi's Mansion 1 on 3DS, WarioWare Move It, Get It Together, Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, and a lot of other games. He's produced, supervised, support directed, project managed, etc. We can't say for certain the extent of his involvement and effect on development for every single game he's worked on, but hey man, that is a good number of games. Not all of them is a winner, but there are a lot of them that are. I emphasize all of this because I'd rather not make this strictly a hit piece against the guy. I'm not a fan at all of how Paper Mario's gone the direction it has. Maybe he has been a powerful influence over it in Metroid Prime. Maybe he really was this demonic puppet master pulling strings. I am planning another giant Paper Mario video, so a lot of what will be said here is probably going to be rehashed in that video as well. And I did research again for this video, but I'm sure some of us remember what happened with Risa Tabata back in 2016. She's been with Nintendo for 25 years, but she did that interview with Game Explain and gave us not appealing answers at all to some of the questions, and the internet got on her case pretty bad over that. She was the villain for a little bit, when she wasn't even the biggest influence with Color Splash either. Not even a major developer or player then, and likely just gave what she thought were sensible answers at the time. And we don't even know how true or how much she believed such statements. I think there are just better ways to get the point across that these answers and reasons for designing these games or executing these ideas these ways aren't strong or very flawed for XYZ than just, oh, this shit's stinky, harassing these people like they stole your girl, your guy, killed your parents, or such similar reactions that border on extreme psychosis, absolute insanity. Tanabe at least likely had more influence than she did as far as these games go, but Paper Mario's constantly had different directors, writers, more producers than just Tanabe, etc. Same with Metroid. So odds are solid there were plenty of ideas, strings, and concepts with these games that it might not even be Tanabe's doing. Like with Metroid Prime 4, as far as Prime 4 specifically, I doubt most of anything wrong with that game is squarely on him. In other interviews as well, it sounded like Retro had to make do with what the previous build of the game was like. The build before they announced restarting development. Nintendo placing Retro in a non-ideal position, and they had no choice but to stick with what Nintendo forced them to work with, crafting this Frankenstein monster of a game more or less. There's a lot of comparisons to a Zelda game, and how Zelda's usually designed, with how Prime 4 is designed. The desert, the dungeon structure, the NPCs and dialogue. Apparently the ending's pretty damn stinky too. There's a lot of different elements and ideas used in Prime 4, even if I only know the surface of that iceberg, but I can't imagine all that went wrong was squarely on him, right? But it could also be a Junichi Masuda or Takashi Iizuka situation, where those guys are both producers for Pokemon and Sonic respectively, for the longest time, and they have had major say in many mainline titles. Even when Paper Mario has had different directors, producers, writers, and whatnot, producer is still an important role regardless, even if it's not created equal across each team, studio, franchise, etc. As just the dude helping lead and create these games, even with my bias factored in, how a currently 27-year-old grown-ass man wants this series made for children to go back to the formula that marked it other than Pokemon, baby's first RPG instead of baby's first action-adventure, and my own assumptions for the guy that may not even be true, I do unironically wish Kensuke Tanabe a good retirement and healthy senior years going forward, 100%. Kick back on that chair, watch the sunset, drinking a cold brewski, after being in an industry you're passionate about for years. Something all of us want to achieve and all of that, plus credit where credit's due with the resume as well. That said though, I would be lying if I said a little part of me wasn't relieved, because Jesus Christ, the impressions he gave us in a lot of interviews and stories regarding Paper Mario, Metroid Prime, Chibi Robo and such, they were not good at all. It's a whole rabbit hole, bear with me, but with Paper Mario, there's often comments and information described from the game's respective directors, writers, co-producers, assistant producers, etc., but also from him across describing just designing the games, wanting to stray from Super Paper Mario's level of storytelling and character work as a common mention and reference instead of mentioning the first two games in a good number of interviews, all three games, 64,000 Eudora and Super, still generally being heavily praised and beloved despite that, and it makes sense why Super in particular fell too far and it gets singled out, but that and how 64 and 1000 Eudora did it as well was kind of the entire point and appeal of those games, but I digress. That This common response of just how they aim to do something different with each Paper Mario since Sticker Star, despite Color Splash by every metric is more Sticker Star, it is Sticker Star 2, it's a Sticker Star sequel through and through, not just in sequence, but design, gameplay, writing, and all that. But they count the paint as the major difference, even though it's mainly the mechanic that glues everything together, just like stickers were, that on top of just suggesting games introduce unique systems and generally don't use the same gameplay system as the previous one, overlooking, once again, Color Splash reusing Sticker Star system, but primarily missing how every single other Mario series does reuse gameplay systems literally all the time, but they managed to deliver fresh, unique systems, ideas, and mechanics while still adhering to the core formula of their respective series. This going with damn near every franchise out there as well. There's also this constant need of wanting to respect the author's wishes made from over a decade ago, which I get respecting the author, source material, and all that, but ignoring there's such a massive pool of characters established in many Mario games before Sticker Star they just do not utilize or mess around with at all to alleviate the restriction, on top of Miyamoto's input in a lot of modern Mario games not really mattering anymore, nor have mattered in roughly a decade. I'm not throwing shade or disrespect whatsoever to Miyamoto, I'm referencing how Miyamoto isn't involved in games anymore for quite a long time, but also Mario, the franchise. It's broadened and achieved so much and to so much success and praise, even by the late 2000s. Forget right now in the mid-2020s. And Miyamoto barely asked or gave much input for Color Splash, and especially Origami King. He wasn't overseeing much of any Mario game during the Switch era, but that philosophy from 2011, 2012, 2013. Despite comments from Miyamoto not liking Sticker Star's build after the fact, a year before the game dropped, this constant referencing to the strict IP team, going through and verifying what kinds of character designs and themes are allowed, that's been a big reason why we don't see wackier designs or more new characters altogether, even though literally no other Mario game or series throughout the Switch generation had such restrictions in place. There was no reason to single out Paper Mario on restrictions towards character designs, and potentially writing and storytelling when 3D Mario, 2D Mario, Luigi's Mansion, Mario spin-offs featuring other Mario characters, Mario and Luigi, etc. were wholly allowed to do such anyways. And that's on top of how the team tries to innovate and do the best they can with these games. And I do believe they are trying the best they could, but they let so many design flaws and gameplay defects still persist and show through the cracks ever since Sticker Star, despite such constant and old backlash and despite common examples, solutions, and ideas to rectify such flaws. It's a lot. I just vomited a lot of numerous elements and pieces about the modern Paper Mario games. Him and other developers describes that me and others have had plenty of issues with, some of which are implied to come from him more than anything. Not all of them, but some stuff, and there are contradictions to certain philosophies and statements made over the years me and others have pointed out. But a major factor, the biggest key to consider in all of this, is that this all predates the Thousand Year Door 2024 remake. Just the existence of this remake flat out sings a very different tune from Intelligent Systems' mindset towards Paper Mario and paints a very different picture that several comments and pieces of information laid out during the 2010s and early 2020s aren't holding up anymore. I'm not trying to mow down all the grass right now, I'm saving that for the future Paper Mario video, but up until then, there were a lot of glares and eyebrows raised at Tanabe, and the Paper Mario stuff wasn't even the whole reason for it, as with Metroid Prime and Chibi Robo interviews in the past adding to that, Donkey Kong as well, etc. But Paper Mario fans held many disagreements with both comments and ideals he and other developers expressed as well, as just the idea of who and what was restricting certain elements people wanted out of modern Paper Mario games for so long, and why they were taking place to begin with. I can imagine for a good number of fans out there that this news is bringing this massive sigh of relief. Again, we'll never fully know or understand to the fullest extent of Kensuke Tanabe's influence on each Paper Mario title, as with numerous other games. Some information he shared isn't exclusive to him, as people like Masahiko Nagaya, Taro Kudo, Risa Tabata, etc. also expressed similar sentiments and guidelines, as well as their own insights. No, I do not think he's the sole reason, the only factor here for every problem Paper Mario Sticker Star, Paper Mario Color Splash, and Paper Mario the Origami King have. Similarly with how that blame was pinned on Miyamoto for a while. I think he is one of the factors to this divide, this controversial direction for the series. I do believe Kensuke Tanabe kind of is a big factor towards it all, but I don't think he's all there is to the whole story. I think it is much more nuanced than that. That said, I don't think him retiring resolves or fixes anything in the end. But admittedly, it really does feel like a weight is being lifted up off my shoulders. Yes, these can just be preconceived notions and biases clouding mine and others' judgment. But the impression and reasonings he gave, as with his own influence, to some of these people making these titles over the years really does not tell me he was just a bystander or a pawn with no control or free will or whatever, forced to abide by a greater entity beyond the character IP team. And even that's very contradictory in of itself. Yes, the idea of Paper Mario specifically getting a character IP team, putting strict guidelines for character designs, writing, etc. could be the case. That's probably what they were talking about, but no other Mario game during the Switch era objectively was given the same type of restrictions, guidelines, and limits to game design, settings, world building, writing, character expression, etc. So it's still tough to buy or believe it makes sense to even be a thing or that strict at all, even still with a fair number of Mario entries during the Wii U and 3DS era. They can be added to the equation despite some parallels and synergy with the stale, vanilla direction of 2D Mario. The entire new Super Mario Bros. Brand synergy with a lot of Mario games, including Paper Mario, the Mario mandates and all that. Like, none of that was Tanabe's fault, and I can imagine he was trying to do and could only do so much damage control at the time. However, I do think with multiple of these games, core design, gameplay elements, writing and story ideologies, even beyond Sticker Star, but primarily the gameplay elements, game design, and similar facets and ideas. I do think he has had quite a decent sway and major input with how they came about, even if he was just the producer. Especially related to certain statements he's done, I can't help but side-eye him a little bit, even when, once again, it might not be entirely his fault. Again, trying not to go super in-depth here, but it is hard to separate Tanabe with some of Paper Mario's faults the last couple generations, knowing about these interviews and these happenings behind the scenes. As a guy going into retirement, I can learn to separate art from the artist in this instance, and Paper Mario games have hundreds of artists all on their own. Recognize his respectable resume, and sure, I'm not going to hold it at least that hard against the man, and I do still wish him the best, but I have to be honest here and say two truths. I think Nintendo as a whole has had quite a bit of mishandled decisions for Paper Mario, and it's looking to be the case for Metroid. And Kensuke Tanabe's retirement, I sincerely doubt is this: the infection has been nipped from the bud, the disease has been cured, the evil is defeated type scenario. In spite of that, I do feel even just that little bit more confident about Paper Mario's future. At the very least, I am more eager now than ever before for what's to come. A little cautiously optimistic, but I'm a little hopeful again. I could be a little hopeful. Does this news mean Paper Mario's next new title will be a grand, prosperous return to its RPG roots and flex creative, foreign, charming characters and settings? Does Tanabe's retirement automatically ensure the direction for the series will finally shift towards the path fans have been clamoring for the past 13 years, at most 19 years? No. You can always find less than stellar directors, producers, writers, localization teams, designers, etc. It's never always guaranteed, but Intelligent Systems is filled with hundreds of talented staff that know how to make their games and series like Fire Emblem and WarioWare, including Paper Mario. Risa Tabata has been in a good number of these interviews, and since her first one back during Color Splash, she did get a ton of flack when she had less influence over the series then as well. Basically, I'm trying to specify don't kill the messenger with Tanabe, but also Risa Tabata, because ignoring she's worked with Nintendo since 2001, she has been working heavily under Tanabe as the assistant producer with the Paper Mario series since Color Splash, and Tanabe is entrusting her with his role, it looks like from the latest interview. For all we know, she could be trying to carry his legacy, his ideology with enforcing Miyamoto's dated philosophy that Miyamoto hasn't been consistent with since then either, but just the imperfect approach to designing these games and pitching ideas and whatnot. What we perceive as bad with what Tanabe's done could be carried by Risa Tabata as well. Even still, I'm not your dad, but I would like to just urge to be a grown-ass adult. Because the funny thing is, at least whining on the internet that these decisions and flaws for these games are poorly executed and flawed, especially for X, Y, and Z, is genuinely more mature and reasonable than harassing these developers, starting a hate mob when the most they've done was just miss the point of what made a series primarily geared towards kids and families so entertaining and beloved, and contributed to making a flawed game at worst. Maybe Tanabe's guilty of worse stuff than I know, for all I know. But I've grown past that dread, angst-filled stage back with my older Paper Mario videos. I do still stand by the vast majority of my opinions and statements from 5+ years ago with those Paper Mario videos. I think a lot of them are still really good, but I think there's a more nuanced and better way of achieving getting your voice across, voicing your opinion, and finding kin that agree with your sentiments. That's why now I just type out and bitch about my thoughts in a coherent manner while trying to encourage and implore. These are just people behind the code and companies sometimes, at least with intelligent systems and a good number of Nintendo's own game studios. It's not always a guarantee, but I'm willing to give Risa Tabata the benefit of the doubt because of 3 key reasons. One is the fact Risa Tabata was the producer for the Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door remake, the same position Kensuke Tanabe's been in numerous titles for many years now, including the Paper Mario games. Kensuke Tanabe has not been credited at all for the remake, something completely different to him contributing to Paper Mario's development since Thousand Year Door back on the GameCube. Take that however you will. He was probably working hard on Metroid Prime 4, to be fair. Tanabe supervised OG Thousand Year Door, but he did produce Super Paper Mario, and neither of those roles stopped the series from what transpired by Sticker Star, so same case could happen here, especially when Tabata's experience with Paper Mario comes more from the modern, controversial titles than Thousand Year Door. But if her first role as producer is with the remake of the one Paper Mario fans clamor to be the template for the series going forward, the game where she herself is privy to exactly what people adore out of the classic Paper Mario formula, I say this is her chance to really put both her knowledge and familiarity with the remake and the consumer feedback to the test. And even then, you could already call the remake a test, which I'd say they passed pretty well. Number 2 is the fact we have the remake of Thousand Year Door at all. That has been such a major factor in the overall scope, philosophy, and direction of the series itself. Maybe it was a sheepish kind of coy response to say, but Tabata did answer they'd consider remastering Thousand Year Door if the demand was there, in which we got a remake, and for a Paper Mario, the remake sold well. It's not eclipsing Super or Origami King. At least best, it might either get close to, match, or barely surpass Sticker Star's lifetime sales at the rate it's going, but it sold better than your average Paper Mario, outselling the original Thousand Year Door, 64, Color Splash, despite Color Splash's reasons for selling poorly. But Nintendo's been considering the factors and reasons for why many of their games either break massive records, flop, or sell moderately well. In the Thousand Year Door remake's case, it dropped towards the end of a console's life, a console that already has a Paper Mario title that dropped during the height of the pandemic, where everyone was stuck in their homes. And for a late era title and remake, surpassing 2 million copies in about half a year is still very impressive. 2 million's not crazy in the grand scheme, but people often forget the only Paper Mario game to crack past 4 million units was Super Paper Mario, which was the first game on the Wii, Nintendo's most successful home console before the Switch. Different circumstances for basically every Paper Mario and a lot of games on Nintendo platforms in terms of their sales. For Paper Mario and Mario & Luigi, just as a comparison, 2 million's very good by both of their respective margins, and even when I'm trying to hype up 2 million copies in a lesser popular Mario series as good sales, Nintendo also doesn't always look at sales to gauge and green light new projects and continuations in multiple series, or formulas. WarioWare's not a major cash cow whatsoever, we still get consistent titles from them. It took quite a while for Fire Emblem to break through 1 million copies, even after being localized here in the West, but they still managed, and there's only a handful of games that cracked past 1 million or more. Xenoblade's a consistent, popular Nintendo series, but it is flat out more niche than Paper Mario and Fire Emblem. But now we expect more Xenoblade content in the future, because of Monolith Soft's output, the game's quality and receptions, etc., even with their okayish sales. And barring Xenoblade, all of these franchises I just listed are Intelligent System series. Paper Mario doesn't really sell worse than these series. Most of the better sold Fire Emblem titles, between the Warriors games, Awakening, Fates, Three Houses, and Engage, parallel heavily with the Paper Mario series' sales. It's not bad by most means. Even then, it's Thousand Year Door, and a very, very faithful remake of Thousand Year Door. All the characters and their unique designs, the incredible writing, characterization, story, in-depth combat system, colorful unique worlds, etc. All of that was kept intact Reviews and reception to the game have been universally praised and glowing across the board. People love the remake, even with the fringe few people on the internet bringing up certain localization changes with the script, where a lot of it still matches the original Japanese version of the game regardless. Even beyond that vocal minority online specifying such, you're generally going to have a very easy time finding a lot of people who adore Thousand Year Door through this remake. Through the original as well, I mean, we've been voicing Paper Mario's been kind of stinky these last several years, because they broke from Thousand Year Door's formula, but the reception overall to the remake is efficacious, strong, and very positive, is my point. Sometimes it's not always about selling really well or breaking records. Even with Nintendo, it's not always about the numbers. It can, and it's often about the response, what works, what doesn't, the reviews, the reception, etc. It took a long time for Intelligent Systems to adhere to such criticisms with Paper Mario technically, but it did happen. In some way, through this remake, it did come to pass, at least once. And they very well can do it again, and now have a modern, clearer template to do so. Plus, they can just flat out use many indie games for inspiration and ideas, given they're inspired by Paper Mario, the likes of Bug Fables, Outbound Ghost, Java Saga, Seahorse Saga, Escape from Ever After, that just came out, Born of Bread, etc. All of these, and many more being games that take Paper Mario's classic formula, introduce new, innovative and unique mechanics and ideas to the core game design, and make them stand out that much more from the unique gameplay elements, as well as the charming, unique characters, worlds, themes, writing, etc. All of that, and them giving us the remake, gives us a strong impression that they know and can accept Thousand Year Door's formula can be expanded upon, evolved upon, and used to craft new ideas and mechanics gameplay-wise, and encourage whimsical, thought-provoking characters, stories, themes, and ideas. And of course, number 3, something I've mentioned before, the Nintendo now is a very different Nintendo from the first half of the Switch generation. Forget the 3DS and Wii U generation. Yeah, we're dealing with a horrendous economic crisis that's not even close to the worst of it. Same exact case with the RAM and GPU crisis. AI investments literally screwing everything up right now. Prices skyrocketing everywhere in every market, not just the tech industry. Nintendo raising prices on a lot of their products and goods, likely to do so again. The game keycard fiasco, not always catching up with certain trends and standards, locking them like extra save files or cloud saving and other things behind paywalls, and other stuff. Nintendo does some stupid-ass decisions from time to time, even when you can make sense of some of them. But as far as game design, game development, and fan feedback in a good number of instances, they do listen, and they are very consistently high quality. It's happened with 3D Mario, 2D Mario, Luigi's Mansion, now Mario RPGs, Zelda, Smash, Animal Crossing, Splatoon, Fire Emblem, and several other franchises in one way or another. And people always like to make the distinction, oh, Nintendo as a company, as a business, boo, throwing spitballs and tomatoes, we hate them. But as a game developer, ooh, they're pretty good. There's always a reason why there's more people always making that distinction. They did not care about Mario RPGs for a time. Now we have 3 different Mario RPGs on Switch 1. 2 of them are remakes, but they wanted to create very faithful, modern interpretations of these games that not only still hold up remarkably well, they, as well as numerous other Mario games like Super Mario Odyssey, Bowser's Fury, Luigi's Mansion 3, Princess Peach Showtime, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, Mario Plus Rabbids, even Mario and Luigi Brothership, etc., but including Super Mario RPG and Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door 2024, emit and flaunt the exact elements we've all been clamoring for Paper Mario to revisit for so long. Creative, new and distinct characters, races and designs, more immersive, layered character moments, deeper, engaging, more involved stories and narratives, innovative concepts to the gameplay, ways to make these formulas and game designs fresh, creative, distinct, fun, and or taking that consumer feedback in doing so. Mileage varies in these examples. Peach Showtime, gameplay-wise, is not the most in-depth or creative one at all. But Paper Mario, just flat out, could not be or do anything like Thousand Year Door. It was not allowed to do much of anything like Thousand Year Door for practically 11 years. Tanabe and other developers in the past have stated they could not touch on or do much of anything like Super Paper Mario, but especially like Thousand Year Door. If this remake dropped earlier than 2024, between it and the 2010s, it's very likely we would have seen a lot of dialogue changes, character designs, gameplay tweaks and such that would make a hypothetical Thousand Year Door remake match much closer to the modern titles than its original, and we know people would have been way more furious. With Nintendo and intelligent systems during the Wii U and even the early to mid-Switch generations, that was a very likely scenario given what Paper Mario was forced to be. Now, for over a year and a half, we've had them bring back and modernize Thousand Year Door regardless of all of that. Tanabe's successor produced the remake, she's had a considerable hand in helping craft it, and it came out great. Just the existence of the remake does a lot, but it, as well as this last generation of Mario games, how a lot of them do exactly what fans have wanted Paper Mario to do, and whatever guidelines and game design philosophies Nintendo and adjacent studios overall have had the last 9 years compared to before, I really do find it tough to imagine Risa Tabata and the rest of the Paper Mario staff would willingly want to deter overall fan consensus, especially when the remake's reception and sales have been favorable and strong, and especially when whatever did restrict Paper Mario during Origami King really wasn't restricting other Mario anything the entire Switch generation, and even a handful of other games during the Wii U and 3DS generation, despite how different each generation was in many ways. Tanabe, I don't think he was this massive canker sore on the series as a whole. I don't think it's entirely his fault for all of modern Paper Mario's flaws, Metroids, etc. But some game design elements and restrictions he explained do nothing but at least raise an eyebrow for sure, and I think it's worth critiquing and making note of. But times now are very different. He wasn't producer for the remake, so take that however you'd like, but Tabata knows now what the fans are craving. I'm confident most of Intelligent Systems knows. Tanabe stepping down, I don't think guarantees the next Paper Mario will be universally good, but everything else I yapped about and listed I think adds more and more to the chances of the next game being universally good. Not divisive, better than the last two, like Origami King. I'm planning on revisiting the game. I'm trying to be more easier on it, but actually, universally, just a pretty good game. I think odds are looking pretty good. Not strictly from Tanabe's retirement, but I do find more reason to be optimistic about Paper Mario's future. I think we're getting closer to the light at the end of the tunnel. I think. That is what I think. How are you guys translating Tanabe's retirement from Nintendo? I'm always interested in seeing what you guys think, so let me know down below. Thank you very much for listening and watching. And we're going to try once again to be more consistent at this YouTube content creator business thing, trend. I'm not really trying to chase trends. And hopefully make it really work as a full-time job / career this time. We'll try and make it work. Stay super.
Yo, hey, 妹妹，嘿，我来呀！共和大哈哈呀！拉面，嘿，来面，来个面，共和再见呀！哈哈，拉面，下手面，谢谢。